Hello and welcome to Connect and Collaborate. I'm Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and I am very excited to get today's show started. But before I do so, I'd like to ask our audience to please visit covrt.com. Check out our webpage there. You can sign up for our newsletter. You can find this radio show and more under the media tab. Just click on radio/podcast. And don't forget to check out our events page for many events that we have coming up in the next couple of weeks. And I'm excited to have in studio with me Chris Schmidt. He's managing partner of Denver for Deloitte. How are you, Chris?
I'm good. Thank you for having us.
Yes, pleasure. And I also have with us Morris Price, Executive Director and Vice President with City Year Denver. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you both very much for joining me, gentlemen. I'm excited. So Deloitte is a partner of the Colorado Business Roundtable.
We are indeed.
Yeah, and we have been trying to do a radio show forever, and I'm very excited to get you in studio here.
I am too. Thanks for having us.
Yes. So one of my things that I like to do with everyone that comes into the studio is I like to have you give a little bit of your background, and so our audience understands who you are, and are you a native? Did you move here? So I'm going to start here with you, Chris, and tell me about your background.
Sure. I sort of a product from Colorado. I'll stop short of saying I'm a native because my wife is, and out of respect for her native Colorado background, I moved here when I was a couple years old. My parents moved here from Missouri, so I grew up and did elementary and middle school and high school. Morris and I were talking. It's rare to have two people our age that went to high school even, but grew up here, Southwest Denver, Kincaid Ranch area. Then for college, I made the not-so-far trek up to Fort Collins and graduated with a bachelor's degree in accounting at CSU. We've got dual Rams here. That's impressive, very impressive. And then I started my career at Colorado Housing and Finance Authority. I worked there for about 8 years. While I was there, don't be upset by this, Morris, but I went and got my MBA from CU. I know. So
give him a little bit. That's it.
I know. Spread it around a little. But on a personal front, married. I have 2 kids. They're both in college. My wife and I joke around when we did the empty nesting thing. One is in Florida and one is in California, so we sent them as far away as we possibly could, and we stayed in the middle to make it equal. Been at Deloitte for a little over 20 years now. I took a slight detour down to Florida for 6 years. Super glad to be back. All of our families here, my wife's family's here, and so being back in Colorado since April of last year has been just a godsend. It's awesome to be back and see so many wonderful people and see the growth here. So that's a little bit of background on me.
Well, the growth here, so you moved back here
in April, yes.
And being gone for 6 years, I'm sure it was a huge change for you.
Yeah, it was incredible. Although, growing up here, you saw the change from, living out in Southwest Denver, Kincaid Ranch, so there was nothing between that and, you get down to Hampton, and now it seems like everything's built up. It is truly phenomenal to see the growth and the change, so.
Yes. Morris, tell us about yourself. Obviously a native.
Proud native. My father and mother are from Louisiana, moved here in the 60s, and my dad was in the Air Force. So I say I was born but not raised here. I was born at Fitzsimmons Army Medical Center, 9th floor west wing. Military brat. We spent time in both coasts of the U.S. and Europe twice, moved back and completed high school here. Mom and Dad's first house was in where Manual High School now sits in the 60s, and then we moved back. We were at Lowry, and then we were at Montbello. Went to Thomas Jefferson High School, Spartans. We were the last class brought from Montbello to TJ, and I remember taking I-25, 225 to I-25, and looking back in the late 70s, they were building out the tech center, and you're like, who the heck's going to work way out there? It seems so distant. Clearly, I had no sense in real estate. And went to Colorado State. Enjoyed it, had a great experience, and then spent the first 15 years of my career in higher education. College admissions, primarily private. Lived in the Midwest, East Coast, and New York area, and then came back mid-90s, become director of admissions at the University of Denver when it's in its big turnaround. Spent 10 years in philanthropy, worked at the Daniels Fund, was one of the first employees at the Daniels Fund when it opened. In the Gill Foundation, I ran Congresswoman Diana Gett's office for 5 years, so did my little stretch with Congress, and then decided to come here where all those careers converged and a little bit of everything. Gives me a chance to do all of it together.
Yeah.
So.
diverse background there.
Yes.
I like it.
Yes.
Yeah, I am a big believer. You got to dabble a little bit in everything before you find your path, right?
Yes.
All right. Well, Chris, tell us about Deloitte. As we know, you're a corporate partner, but what more should we know about Deloitte?
A couple things. Deloitte, obviously, most people know us from 150 years ago when we started as an accounting and auditing firm, and we've grown quite a bit since those days. Now we kind of are in 4 businesses. We've got that auditing business, we've got a tax business, we've got a financial risk and advisory business, and then a consulting business. Nearly 300,000 people worldwide, which is just incredible to me, in 150 countries. The real striking thing is the Denver growth. So when I started 20 some odd years ago, we had 250 people in the Denver office, and 20 years later we had 1,050. And when I took over about a year ago, we've grown to 1,450 since then. So we've added 400 people since about a year ago, which is just incredible growth, which is really based on, we have double-digit growth in the firm, and, a lot of our growth here is a function of, the firm's growth, and we add people here to kind of make sure we cover geographies. But more specifically, we've had a lot of growth in our cyber practice here. We've got a big federal practice presence here. We've got a Deloitte digital studio that's here. We've got 100 folks that kind of work on some really cutting-edge technology, and they're doing blockchain and drones and virtual reality and just some really interesting stuff. We've got 4 offices in Colorado. A lot of people don't know that. We've got an office down in Union Station, which when we were growing up here, Union Station was probably
a place where your parents didn't want to hear you were hanging out.
Yeah, exactly. You didn't go down there. Now it's on its, second or third reincarnation, and it's a wonderful area.
Nice.
We have that Deloitte digital studio I mentioned, which is right on 16th Street Mall. We have another office right near the Capitol, and then we just opened another office down in Colorado Springs that has about 200 folks at it. So phenomenal growth, really excited to be with the firm. We do some wonderful things, not only in the business community, but we also do some great things in the community, one of which we're obviously going to talk about today. So that's a little bit of background on Deloitte.
Appreciate that. And how about a little background on City Year Denver?
City Year. So City Year Denver is a part of a national organization of City Year. The organization was founded itself in 1988 in Boston with the intent of allowing young people the opportunity to serve their country. In 1988, there were only 2 opportunities for 2 young people to do community service, and both were international, the military or Peace Corps. And we had the idea, what can they do for their own country? So along comes Bill Clinton, who discovers this and creates AmeriCorps. And I tell people, think about AmeriCorps as the NFL of nonprofits. It's an umbrella organization where many nonprofits do domestic community service. We've been in Denver since 2011. Our national goal is to cut the urban dropout rate by 2/3. Prior to 2010, City Years around the country, and there are 29 sites, both, and then additionally 1 in South Africa and 2 in the United Kingdom. There are 3,300 AmeriCorps members around the country. We have 75 young people who've committed a year of service, and that's what it is. It's a year of service, so it's not a job. They've taken a stop out of their career or before they launch their career. 20% of our core members have a high school diploma or some college. The remainder have everything from undergrad degrees to full-blown masters. So we have 6 students who came out of high school to figure out what they want to do with their lives, some who've stopped. Then I have a young man he has 5 choices for med school, and a young lady who had a master's in nuclear engineering from University of Michigan. 80% come from outside of Colorado. They come to Denver and they commit themselves to a year of service in Denver public schools with a focus on improving attendance, behavior, English, and math literacy, the ABCs. It's a phenomenal thing to be a part of, watching young people stop and give so much back to their lives. They receive a stipend of $14,000 a year, and that's what they live on while they do it. Yeah. And in the end, often their biggest concern is not about the stipend, not about how much what they lived on, but did I do enough? Our goal is for every young child we meet with from 1st through 9th grade to move up a year and a half in growth. And give them an opportunity to particularly participate in companies like Deloitte and have real choices when they come out of high school.
That's amazing. I want to ask, so you don't need a degree to join this?
No, you do not.
Awesome.
You do not, yep.
Yeah, because Peace Corps, I know you have to have that degree, so AmeriCorps.
And that's City Year. Each AmeriCorps program is different. We want to offer that young person a chance to stop and say, what do I want to do with my life? And I think the business community is now aware that not everyone has to have a college degree. I can think of when I was the director of admissions at the University of Denver, how many young people should not have been interviewing with me. They just thought that was what they were supposed to do.
Right.
I had a young man 2 years ago who came in from Wisconsin, high school diploma, and was looking to go into med school, did a year of service, and said, you know what, I don't want to go to college. He's now an EMT. And how fortunate we are that he did not go someplace where he didn't want to be, go into debt. And I think education is an investment, and now he is where he wants to be. And we offer that young person that chance to do that.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you get some awesome feedback from the schools that that the City Year people are in.
Yeah. So our long-term impact, again, is to cut the urban dropout rate. We've been, for example, at North High School for the last 8 years, and we've seen graduation rates go from 55% to 75%. Our model is a near-peer mentorship. The core members are just young enough to relate to the kids, but old enough to be a mentor. And we think it's that combination that where they can focus and help them understand what's going on in their world and get them focused on their education. A lot of these kids just have so many other distractions. It may just be life. It may just be going through growing up itself, but have someone kind of be that mentor and that side post they can talk to, help them get them back on track.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, it may seem like I have a weird combination with you guys in here from City Year and from Deloitte. But
we do have something in common. We already established that.
Yes,
CSU.
you got that Colorado background, which I love hearing. Though that being said, there is another reason that you guys are here today. Deloitte has taken it to make sure that they have a partner with City Year. So let's talk about that partnership and what that means, first of all, for City Year and then for Deloitte.
Sure.
And I think this is the perfect word is partnership. We are fortunate that we have a number of individuals or companies that support us, but when you think about the various ways that Deloitte complements what we do and assists us in what we do, we are fortunate to have some of the senior leadership on our board. So there's a real investment of her time. We have the full participation of the company with everything from all of our AmeriCorps members have a mentor, and we invite members of the community to be as a mentor to them. So many of them have moved to Denver, never been here before, or they're experiencing how they get out on their own. And Deloitte has a number of their employees who that's how they give. They commit a year of service to our core members to helping them navigate their own lives and career. So we're fortunate to have that. They have been very generous as both a national partner, but also as a local sponsor. And when I say partner in national level, they're more than just their capital gifts, which are important and valued, but they do interesting work for us. They created what's called the Deloitte paper, which looked at our concept and said, how can we make sure, how is this scalable? Can we look at we call what's with the elements of our work to see the consistency, the customization, the continuity and cost. Looking at what's happening around the country, does this work? And to have the brand of someone like Deloitte author that kind of work, partner with us, says a great deal about who we are and gives us validity when we move into the community.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. It is a signature, sponsorship that we have at Deloitte. It's not only here in Denver, but as Morris alluded to, we, I think, do financial contributions at 16 of the, chapters, so to speak, around the country. Yeah. And, it's not only the financial piece, but I think a business like ours, is largely made up of people, and we've got 300,000 people in the United States and, 1,450 here. And giving our folks an opportunity to invest in the community and be mentors and do things like, we call it pro bono projects, but, being able to use their skills in consulting and helping businesses be more transformational and helping them address issues and problems, but being able to do that on the local level in the community that they live in is something that they value tremendously. So, we have this, it's called Right Step Educational Portfolio, and City Year being one of the participants in the Right Step portfolio is just, it's great to have them here. And we've got a local partner who Morris knows very well, Wendy Ralston, who is an audit partner in our Denver office. She's a great female leader and partner in our office, and she devotes time on the board and participates. And Morris was telling me a couple stories about how she's really helped them with their financials and pulling those together and doing some wonderful things, something that I didn't even know before we came here. But it's just great to see and hear that the things we do are making a tangible impact. So I think that's the most important.
And we have companies, again, we appreciate support at different levels from different corporations, but I think Deloitte goes above and beyond. When we did pulled together our staff retreat a year ago last summer, we wanted to find a way to showcase the individuality of people's work styles, how collectively they lead to a greater growth and meeting our vision and mission. And Deloitte brought a tool in, the Deloitte Business Tool, which looks at personalities and work assessments. And to have a common tool like that says, we appreciate the diversity of skills and personalities you bring to the office, and let's recognize that as a value. And it sits in front of everyone's door. It tells a little bit about who they are. So when you go into a meeting with them, here's who I'm going to engage and how to engage with them. To have a company think outside the box like that is important for us. And I call the time, talent, and treasure, and the temple. It's obvious what the first three are, but the temple is, where's your heart of your giving? And what does it mean for the person who, it's not about the dollars, not just about the time, but are we aligning with your values? And I think in so many ways, Deloitte has shown us that they support our young people and we support their ways of giving. And that's the real value that we complement. And one reason why Deloitte was a recipient of our first National Business Sponsorship Award last year at our business luncheon. And we were so proud to say an award is just not just recognition of who's getting it, but sends a message to the rest of the community about this is what we consider an ideal model leadership and corporate leadership. And we were proud to have Deloitte as that first icon that people can measure up against.
That's awesome.
You completely agree. I think the thing that's most beneficial for us in these relationships is, as Morris mentioned, it's not always of a financial nature. I mean, clearly the financial aspect helps, but he mentioned lots of things that they get out of this. We get lots of things out of it too. I mean, our people, like I alluded to, they love doing this kind of work. They love doing it in our community, but it also gives our younger folks an opportunity to kind of hone their skills. So when they're out interacting with, your AmeriCorps folks in the schools, it's giving them an opportunity to to coach and develop some of their skills as a supervisor, a manager, just being a mentor, because they're out doing this with clients all the time, and that's not as safe an environment as some of the other environments. So this is a great opportunity for younger folks to go out and have that interaction and build those communication skills and build those consulting skills. So we truly do see it as a partnership, and it's great when both parties can get something out of it, and it's somewhat symbiotic. So
we use the term mutually beneficial, and I think that sometimes seems almost cliche, but this is really truly that case. Yeah. They sponsor our 18-minute networking, which is not a career fair. It's just a chance for core members to sit down and talk to someone and say, what was your career path? Because people are often surprised how you got to where you are. And because of that, we have a young man who actually has expressed an interest in now in joining Deloitte. He had a broad financial background, a degree in economics and ethics. And he was asking, he said, where can I go? I said, I think there's an obvious place for you to look at. Absolutely. And that, to me, is where we start contributing to the workforce development part. We're not just an educational tool for the long term, if you want to invest in first through ninth graders, but we're that immediate contribution to the Denver workforce, which is so needed given the employment gap that we have in the city.
Yeah, completely agree. We view their AmeriCorps folks as a great potential pipeline for individuals joining Deloitte. I mean, who better to talk to and work with as a potential new employee is somebody that you've already had a chance to get to know and develop a rapport with and kind of understand what they're all about. So.
And we think when you have a young person who's willing to move to Denver, and they work long hours. They are at the school at 7:15 in the morning. Some cases they're going into the housing communities and walking kids to school, so it's called walking school bus. And then they're at the front door every morning greeting kids and high fives. Good morning, Morris. Good morning, Chris. Good morning, Rachel. It doesn't matter if a kid can learn if they're not there. We want to appreciate it. We make phone calls to parents that says, we want to be glad that Morris was in school today. Not the bad calls, but good calls. They are in the classroom with the teachers helping, and then they run after school programs. So their days end around 6 o'clock at night. Then they go back home. So these are long days, and we think someone who can do that for a stipend of $14,000, make a commitment to a product, a value, and as an ideal employee. And we hope others would see that as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I imagine they make great employees.
Well, yeah, because once they get to Deloitte, it's 9 to 5 and no long hours at all. So it's perfect. They get to finally come take a break.
Exactly. Workforce development is one of my passions, most certainly. And you mentioned a few times you are helping people find their path on a career. And obviously, Deloitte is a great place to work for. And so it's exciting to see that you guys are both, as you said, mutually beneficial for each of you. What was the catalyst for this partnership to start? Where was that brainchild thought out?
Well, we're the beneficiary. This is something that, again, Deloitte saw the vision to do this nationally. So they started certainly with our headquarters, and we've been fortunate that it didn't just stay in those larger cities. That we're fortunate that a city like Denver, where often people used to, people call it the flyover city. So if you flew over, you missed the best parts. and that we were fortunate that when we came here, Deloitte was one of our founding sponsors. So
yeah, I think, at a national level and at the local level, we have our priorities as well. But education, diversity, veterans are things that, we value as a firm. And so I briefly mentioned the Right Step educational portfolio that we have. So the portfolio is basically a portfolio at the national level where we've decided these are entities or causes that we want to get involved in at the educational level. So again, we've got somebody that sits on the national board of directors for City Year, and with that portfolio approach, we're able to pick entities that align with our values and the things that we're promoting, and then permeate them down to the locations where we reside. Because again, I said we're in 150 countries, a whole bunch of cities in the United States, so it affords us the opportunity to get involved at the local level. So.
Yeah.
I just think, again, when people think about corporations, they often think about the certain type of workforce. And one thing Deloitte has spoken to and shown our core members when we have community panels where we invite employees, just to tell us your story, how you got to where you are. And to hear that there was no linear pathway that said, I started here and I wound up here, allows some of our core members to realize that you're going to have multiple careers, multiple career lives, and that's okay. Because and there's also, they have a perception, I think, of what a for-profit company is, particularly a large one. Yeah. And then here they meet someone who's willing to spend time out of their day and their evening mentoring them and saying, are there other career opportunities? Not just, and Deloitte can certainly say more, but it's more than just a suit and tie. There's so many other opportunities for you there. We want them to think broader since they have an opportunity to do so.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I was just going to say, in industries, when you think about them, right, a lot of people think of aerospace, they immediately think astronaut.
Sure. There's
tons of other careers that you can look at, and same
Absolutely.
goes for business. And, particularly when you look at high school students, they think, well, business, I wear a tie every day and carry a briefcase and then sit behind a computer all day, and that's simply not true for every business.
Yeah, I think I'm always astonished that young folks, the view that they have of our company, and they think that just everybody's accountants or CPAs and that's all they do. And when I kind of tell my story about the 20 years at Deloitte, I kind of describe it in I had 3 or 4 different roles or jobs almost within Deloitte, and then it's the number of companies I've touched. So being able to kind of share that with them and impart that. Well, it's maybe not the norm anymore that people work at a company for 20 some odd years. I mean, you can be someplace and have a whole lot of different careers and see a whole lot of different things. So it's interesting to be able to share that with folks.
Yeah. I would love to hear how I can get more involved with City Year, whether that's if I'm looking to do the service myself or if I want to partner with you as a business.
Thank you. I think those are 2 clear opportunities. We want to encourage young people to look at us as an option. If you're coming out of high school and you're not quite sure what you'd like to do, or you know what you want to do, but you want to take a little break, gap year is not as common out here as it is in the East Coast, but we encourage those students, those young people. If you're in the middle of your high school, your college career, and you think you want to try something, take the step. If you're out of college and in between graduate school or after graduate school, what we mentioned at the end of their service, they're awarded a $6,000 Siegel Award. It's the equivalent of the Pell Grant, and they can use that to pay on their student loans or to pay for college moving forward. We have over 100 universities and colleges around the country where you can use those Ed Awards. We have relationships with companies like Deloitte, other companies that suggest that if you finish the year, you have an opportunity to interview, and here's the process. You have an advantage. So we want to show them there's an added value to the service. So you can do that. And you can apply from Denver and go to any one of the 29 sites around the country. We'd love to have you here, of course. And then for those partners, either individually or companies, we want to build partnerships. We have an upcoming event, which is our Women's Leadership Breakfast, where it's going to be May 8th. And it says Women's Leadership Breakfast. It was started with that, but we invite all people to come. This year, the keynote speaker will be Susan Taylor, who is doing a national program on mentoring and the value of mentoring. In busy lives, we tend to lean on apps on phones, that value of one-to-one relationships. So we have opportunities for those to attend, but also companies to sponsor. And then other ways to engage, again, from small micro ways of our core members on $14,000 a year appreciate the little things. Yeah. If you have a company that just has, if you have tickets for a basketball game, let us know. We can send kids there and the core members there. If you want to donate the non-sexy things that they live on, I mean, when you live on that stipend, things like laundry detergent, donate supplies that these young people can continue to focus on their giving in the schools, and we'll help take care of their day-to-day existence. And then we have other events that we certainly like to talk to partners around supporting.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We're going to be right back in the next segment with Kristen Blessman from Colorado Women's Chamber. So stay with us here on Connect and Collaborate. Be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube page and check out more on City Year Denver. So be sure to check that out. Thank you so much. We'll be right back.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Connect and Collaborate. Once again, I'm Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and we have in studio with us Chris Schmidt, managing partner in Denver for Deloitte. And you might have noticed we have a new guest in with us. This is Kristen Blessman. She is the president of the Colorado Women's Chamber of Commerce. You've been on the show with us before, Kristen. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a while.
Yeah, so welcome. And just because it has been a while, I'd love for you to give us a little intro and background about yourself.
Great. Well, as you said, I'm Kristen Blessman. I'm the president and CEO of the Colorado Women's Chamber of Commerce. I've been with the Women's Chamber for a little over 2 years in a very transformative time for women in business. And so we've been working very hard on our mission to advance women in business in Colorado, and Deloitte is a fantastic partner in helping us do that. So we're very excited. We have over 400 member companies and over 1,000 engaged members. And I think our organization is a great place to really help create systematic change for what the workforce looks like for women.
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit about that and the founding of the Women's Chamber and kind of current projects that you're working on now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think if you're really thinking about chambers of commerce in their traditional sense and form, our Chamber of Commerce started 30 years ago. And it doesn't really seem like that long ago when you talk about it, but the opportunities for women in business 30 years ago were very, very different. And the landscape was so different than today. And so a couple years ago when I joined the Chamber, we really had to look at how are we really serving women. Back, 30 years ago, they were just starting to enter the workforce in very non-traditional roles, and business ownership looked very different for women back then as well. There was a lot of women that still wanted to stay home and have hobby businesses. Well, the landscape is so different now. Now, saying that doesn't mean that there isn't a lot of work that needs to be done. And I'm sure you're all familiar with the statistics, but I always have to let people know what they are. So women-owned businesses in Colorado, 86% of them have only one employee. And nationally, less than 2% of women-owned businesses ever get over $1 million in revenue. And then, as we're all aware, Colorado is almost last in the nation for number of women on publicly traded boards, and we're still not in that C-suite enough. So when you look at those statistics and what our Chamber of Commerce needs to do to help advance women in businesses, we have to partner with organizations to really say, okay, here's the landscape. How are we going to partner together and be a resource for you to change these statistics? So really, when you look at sort of all of our projects and programming, that's what we're focused on. We want to see those statistics change.
Well, and I'm curious to know, those statistics, they come from us, because every time I feel like I go to an event, I meet more and more women CEOs and leadership positions, which is really exciting for me as somebody this is my first foray into the business world. I've only been doing it for 2 years. And it's really exciting to see that. So I guess my view versus the statistics feel a little off. But yeah, so you are changing that. What has grown since you've been there in the 2 years?
I think what's grown unfortunately, even though the statistics might seem like they're getting better, they really aren't. Okay. So we are seeing more women in the C-suite. 14% is what the current statistic is. But the latest McKinsey & Company study, I think back in 2017 when I joined the Women's Chamber, it was saying that it was going to take women 100 years to catch up to where men are in the workforce. Now it's 107. So unfortunately, we're going a little bit backwards. Yeah. We have some data that from our membership shows why we think that's happening and what the statistics are in the workplace and what really needs to change. And so we surveyed our members and said, what's hindering us as women from getting into, on publicly traded boards, into the C-suite. And I think a lot of it is the system, but I think a lot of it is us as well. And that's why I think, partnerships with training programs like Deloitte and what they're providing of looking at serving women and helping them get there, and specifically serving women and how we do that is very different. And so I think all of our programming where we're looking at, we're going to create growth and advancement for women is dealing with that. And the statistics really are, number one is unconscious bias in corporate culture. We hear that over and over and over from women, that there's still that sort of bias there that we don't, and I don't think people, it's unconscious for a reason. They don't really realize that they're doing it, but it still does need to change. Number two is really us. It's communication. It's how we communicate with ourselves. It's how we communicate on behalf of ourselves or advocate for ourselves and other women. We really need to work on that, and lack of mentorship and sponsorship at the top. So those are the three things, and I think the board training program that Deloitte's doing is really helping to deal with a lot of those issues.
Well, let's talk about the program then,
Great.
shall we?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if you want to introduce that.
Sure. So we started a board-ready women's program. We launched our first one in Denver in April. It's part of a 4-part educational series, I guess you say it is. When I first took over my role about a year ago, we had a very good grasp of, the 3 things that we wanted to do in the community and we wanted to rally around. We were doing lots of things around education. We were doing lots of things around veterans organizations. But diversity inclusion, which is something that's really big in our firm, and we take pride in doing things in that area. I looked at our marketplace and said, we just weren't doing enough and we weren't involved enough. And so kind of stepped back and looked and thought about what we could do here locally. And after reading a couple articles about how abysmal our female participation rate was on boards, I think we were 23 out of 24 in terms of cities that have more than 10 Fortune 1000 companies in it. It's not good. So what can we do? So we have a Center for Board Effectiveness inside of Deloitte. We run board-ready programs in 20 some odd cities. And I thought, well, we could do that here, but I'd rather focus it on females. Why not? Why not make it a female-only board-ready program? So that's what we decided to do. Launching it was a little bit harder than I thought, but sometimes the best things are the hardest things. So I reached out to 3 people, most of which I knew already. Kristen happened to be one of those people that I didn't know. I just knew that if I was going to launch a board-ready women's program, it seemed like the logical starting place was the Women's Chamber of Commerce. So I sent her an email. We had lunch. We met. We talked about the program, what I wanted to do, the goals of it, and I asked her if she would be willing to give me a pipeline and recommend / nominate females that would be a good fit for the program. So along with you, I did that with Beth Walker, who's the dean of the business school at Colorado State University, and I also did it with Christine Bonero at United Way. I have to say, with all the Kristens and Christines, it was hard for me to begin with. We got Kristen,
it's
and then
ridiculous.
There was Christina, and then there was Kristen, and then I've got another Kristen.
Well, you just did great.
Yeah, I did.
All of those names were right.
Well, then the first phone call that we had internally inside Deloitte, I had the same phenomenon, but it was with Debbie's, Deborah's, and Debbie's. So between those 2 sets, I've got a lot of.
And your name is Chris.
Yes, exactly. We talked about that.
I was going to say.
Yeah. So through the combination of talking with the 3 of those great female leaders in our community, they all had some great recommendations and nominations. From there, I asked our partner director group, which in Denver is 90 folks and is nearly made up of 50% females, which is a great thing, in terms of our phone. You think of people that are at the highest level of our organization, and we're almost at parity in the Denver office, something I'm very proud of. So with that, we ended up with a cohort of 19 awesome, female executives in town that have aspirations to be on either public or private for-profit boards. So that's kind of the genesis of how it launched. We can talk more about the program itself, but that's how we got started, and that's how we got here.
And I think what Chris is doing at Deloitte is so critical because there are board training programs. What I think theirs does specifically is it creates a pipeline. So oftentimes when you're trying to make statistical change, you want to take a woman who's pretty much ready and then just, get her on a board. And what I like about Deloitte's program is it's still taking like C-suite and director level women, but it's putting them through intensive training so that they can be on a pipeline. One of the things that we hear from publicly traded CEOs is I want more women on my board, but they're not quite ready. Yeah. And so I think it's critical to get them maybe not when they're CEOs, but in the C-suite or VP level and get them to do all the things that create the pipeline so that they are prepared and ready. And that was one of the reasons why I really appreciated their program, because they were willing to take them sooner and get them ready to serve.
Well, and I definitely want to get into the details of the program and how we do that, but what does someone who's not ready and someone who is ready, what does that look like?
Yeah.
Do you want to take it, or I can too?
Yeah, I think we probably both have.
And we'd say the same thing.
Yeah, similar things. You know, one of the statistics, and again, we're not delusional about our program. It's not going to on its own fix the issue and the problem.
Then what are we here for?
It won't fix the problem, but it's going to start and it's going to make a dent. I mean, one of the things that you learn when you look at the composition of boards and who gets on boards is that more than 50% of the people that wind up on boards are people that were CEOs of companies. So again, back to your statistic that if only, I think you said 17 or 14% of CEOs are women, and 50% of all the people that are getting on boards are CEOs, right there you have kind of a dilemma. So, you know, clearly companies have to be vested in diversity and inclusion and giving appropriate opportunities to everybody. And, you know, once you increase the levels of, you know, folks in C-suite positions, that starts to affect the whole, you know, problem we're trying to address. So.
Yeah, and I think, you know, kind of going back to that, when we talked about number 2 of the statistics that I gave, the communication on behalf of women, and I think, you know, I am so impressed by your 50% statistic because it's really, really abnormal. Yeah. Because, you know, one of the things that we're hearing is that women are stepping out because they feel, or the perception is that when you get into that CEO role, that your whole life is going to change, and all of a sudden you have no balance anymore and you can't do it. And then on top of that, you're going to become a CEO and serve on a board and add more to your plate. So we really have to work on the perception and communication of women to say, actually, yes, and, you know, you can still have balance, you can do all these things, and it is possible. You just can't do it all at once. I think as women, we're perfectionists, right? So if we're going to be on a board, we're going to do that perfectly, and we're going to do our jobs perfectly, and we want to be a perfect mother. And I think we really do have to work on, again, going back to that professional development for women, we have to work on that so that they do go into the C-suite and they do take the board opportunities when they're presented to them.
Yeah. And our CEO is a female, Kathy, and she's a wonderful CEO, and she's brought some really great programs to the firm. And it's, you know, I can't imagine another leader being in the position right now for our firm. She just does a great job. But so back to your comment about the pipeline. I mean, I think right now, you know, we've got a great group of, you know, 19 women that are C-level executives at, you know, all shapes, sizes, varieties of entities in Denver. And, you know, again, I think the biggest part is helping demystify boards to a lot of people, because during the sessions we've been having, a big part of what I've kind of tried to focus on is panel discussion. So in our first session that we had, it was really geared towards kind of board 101 and kind of helping everybody understand what is it like to be on the board? What is the time commitment of being on the board? What are the profile of people that ultimately wind up on the board? And so at the end of that, we had 2 folks that are active board members come in and just to, you know, kind of open forum, ask questions. And I think the ability for them to ask questions and kind of get to the heart of some of the things they were curious about is important. The second session we had, and we were just talking that maybe you might try and come by and stop in and see one of them. But the second one we had was really all about the kind of legal and fiduciary responsibilities of being on a board, which again, had somebody from the law firm that's above us, Hogan and Lovells, come in, and Gina Rodriguez did a great job of making it real, something that admittedly she said, you know, could be a boring topic, but giving some real great examples of what actually happens in the boardroom and how does this work. And then again, having a panel discussion afterwards with 3 females that live in our community that are on some super high-powered public company boards, Meg Porfido, Denise O'Leary, and Nancy Tourmore. Just a wonderful panel discussion. And you, I think, know probably all of them.
I do.
And just the nature of the boards they're on and the things that they're involved in and how they got there and their stories, I think was something that was really beneficial for the group to see. It kind of helped them start thinking about their story and how would they craft their expertise. I mean, one of the conversations we had was, well, just because you're the, you know, CFO in a company today doesn't mean that you would be pigeonholed in a board potentially as only being on the audit committee. And kind of getting experiences in real life coaching from the 3 of them on, you know, how do you kind of craft your story and your position, and how do you make yourself more attractive to a certain kind of board than, you know, somebody else with similar skills. So it's very interesting. So.
Well, and I think what's so critical about what Chris just mentioned is when you look at that third statistic, the lack of mentorship and sponsorship, it's really critical for women to see other women do things so that they know that they can.
Yeah.
And to hear those stories and hear how they did it, he's putting women that are doing this at a very high level in front of other women so that they can ask those questions, right? Okay, so you are doing that. Oh, great. She had kids, or she's done that, or she's in the C-suite. She has a critical role with her organization. And on top of that, she's able to do this. And so I think that that's really important in helping us get there.
Yeah.
Oh, I would agree. Yeah. As I said, I'm just venturing into the business world, and it's really awesome to see. Every event I go to, there's more and more women in leadership roles, and I get to mingle with them, and it's exciting to know that there is a role model out there for me, and she's crushing it, and I can too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I want to ask you, I don't think it's off topic, but as you know, we have a man in the room discussing women being in leadership roles, and some people would say that's kind of counterintuitive, I think. And I disagree.
Me too.
Yeah. I think it's important to have men be allies for us, really, and doing this. So, yeah, discussion on that? Thoughts?
Well, I think it is important.
We had that conversation, really.
Okay.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, it's critical, right? If we don't have men at the table, first of all, men are running businesses. They know how to do it. They've been doing it for a very long time. If we don't have men advocating for us and showing us how to do this, it's not going to happen. And I think, again, I always tell the story of it took a man planting the seed in me saying, you can be a CEO. And of course I did the whole communication thing of, no, I can't. I'm a single mom. There's no way I could, and, he was very interested in, so I don't know about all of that, but I can show you the way to get there. And then, maybe we'll get you some female mentors to kind of help navigate, all of those other aspects in your life. And I think, just this being Chris's idea and something that he owns is phenomenal. And I think it's critical to have male advocates on behalf of women. It's super important. So I applaud what you're doing.
Well, I appreciate that. Kind words.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we did. When we sat down at lunch, that was one of the first questions I asked you. I said, something I want to do. I think there's a problem. I think I can help solve it. But is it odd, or is it weird that I would be the one that's doing this? And so we had a conversation, and you got me beyond some of the, skepticism and questions I had about it. Now, that said, I've really tried to, index on making sure there's a lot of great female, role models that are part of the program. I've sprinkled in some, men that are on boards in one of the first conversations, but I think I see the light in their eyes when they have the panel discussions, and there's 3 females that are up in front of them that are sitting on some, really high-powered public boards, and it just showed that, I can do this, and I've got the capabilities and skills, and it's not that big a deal. So.
Yeah. Well, I think when you go back to diverse perspectives, right? When I first started at the Women's Chamber, our board was almost entirely women with 2 men. And I noticed a difference right away that we didn't have enough diverse perspectives. And in fact, Chris gave me a man that works at Deloitte to serve on our board, Gil Gomez. So we really looked to diversify our perspective because you can't do it with just one. And so that's why I think programs like this are really important. And we are actively recruiting men to be at the table to help solve this issue. It's really important.
It is. It's a mutual respect, right? And I think what we're seeing, because you mentioned a few times the problem of being a mom on top of having to have this high power status. And I think we're also seeing a role at home switching for men, taking more of that fathering role too. And
men want that opportunity as well.
Yeah.
And again, hearing the diverse perspectives allows all voices to come out.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and when, again, going back to the conversations we had, she asked the question, if we had interest in placing somebody on the board, my first question was, help me understand the profile. What are you looking for? You want a finance person, a non-finance person? You want a man?
Yeah.
You want a woman? And I was happy to hear her answer, which is exactly what she just said, because that's one of the reasons we get involved and we're passionate around diversity and inclusion, because we found in our business when we have teams that go out to do projects with our clients and they all look exactly the same, the result is not as robust and as, kind of all-encompassing and looking at things from different points of views as it would be otherwise. And I've had it in my personal experience working on client projects when I've got teams that are made up of men and women and younger folks and older folks and people from the U.S. and outside of the U.S. And the thinking is just so much better, in my opinion.
I agree.
It's just really, really interesting. So.
Yeah, I think one goal that we should all reach for is that 50% men and women on any given board. I think one of the things that I know Colorado is trying to do is at least get one woman on every board in Colorado. That's a goal that I've heard from many people, but it'd be great to see 2, 3, 5,
right,
what have you.
Yeah, and I think that you would hear from most CEOs that they want that as well.
Yeah.
So there needs to be some changes that happen and some pipeline creation as a result of that.
So let's talk about that pipeline creation and that specific courses that you offer, so to speak, for this program in particular.
Yeah. So let me go back and I'll rewind just a little bit, because one of the things that I think is really unique about our program is it is a no cost, no fee program, and we would have never wanted to charge for this. It's not something that we would have done or ever would think about doing. But I think that's important because there are other programs out there that are good as well. But for somebody who's thinking about being on a board and they're not sure if they're really going to go that route or not, investing, several thousands of dollars in a board program, again, it somewhat, hampers the pipeline, right? So no fee program. I talked earlier about the first 2 of the 4-part series. So each of the 19 individuals in the program is a 19-person cohort. They're going through all 4 pieces together. So they'll graduate, so to speak, after the April meeting. So we've done 2, and I talked about the topics of those. The third one is really more about placement. So we've got a recruiting firm that's going to come in and work with us, and they talk about how do you get placed on boards? What's that process like? When a board seat opens up, who gets notified? How do people find out? How do they go searching for people? Where's the repository of all these people? So we talk about that. And that's the third meeting. And then the last one is really geared towards helping them write their board bio. Because one of the most important things in getting on boards is having a bio that's out there in the internet, social media. It's just resident out there that people can look at. And how do you craft that? How do you highlight the things that are important for boards? So that collection of 4 pieces is kind of the educational series, so to speak. So
yeah, wonderful to hear. And I love that it's free too. Because as you said, investing that thousands of dollars that you could at potentially another program, that will take you a long way.
And I found so far the biggest cost for us is actually the wine.
Not surprising.
Yes.
Not at all surprising.
I've learned lots of things. I know the favorite wines of all the folks that come, and I know that I better have plenty of Pinot Noir, and that's their favorite, and we all have a great time. So free
and wine, you guys are going to be getting calls.
Yeah, exactly. I probably should have left that part out. I should have left that. But she's definitely coming to the next one.
Well, I want to ask you both here, different perspectives, but advice. Any advice to someone who potentially wants to start something like this with their company? How would you go about that?
Yeah, I think the biggest advice I could give to anybody is don't do it alone.
Right.
We didn't necessarily formally, contractually partner with anybody. We were joking around off air about, we made a gentleman's, so to speak, agreement on something, and but don't do it alone. I mean, I found out and figured out before I even started that I needed to reach out to some other folks. I mean, I could not have dreamed of having 19 wonderful individuals in the program without having reached out to you and Christine and Beth at CSU. I also know where our strengths, start and stop, and we're not a law firm. And so bringing in, somebody from Hogan Lovells to kind of facilitate that conversation just added a lot of credibility to the program. And then bringing in an executive search firm that focuses on board search. So if you're going to do it and you're passionate about it, first is go do it. And second is go get the right people to participate, because it's going to make the program that much more robust. So
I agree. And specifically, what I appreciate about what Chris is saying is that oftentimes companies do. They're like, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to have our own women's resource group, or we're going to do our own board readiness training. And they could have easily said, and we're just going to do this, with us, and we're not going to. And I think it's really important to partner. And I think specifically, one of the things that we've seen, especially with women, and I don't know why this is, but there tends to be some competition when it's just within your organization. And when you invite other organizations organizations in, and women from different ones, they tend to be more of a good cohort. They work as a team better. So I think it's really important to think of that when you're thinking of starting this, that it's very important to bring different company perspectives into the program. When we're not competing, we're just helping each other. Yeah. So I think that that's very important, that they're allowing people from other organizations to come in and take the program. The other piece of advice that I would have, especially, when we're talking about women's voices, is you got this, you can do it, and just go for it. Because I think oftentimes, women, you've heard the study of if we don't have 100% of the qualifications, we tend not to go for something. And so when you look at, a board readiness training program, a lot of women are going to be like, well, I don't really have what needs to be done to be on a board. And I think, we need to be careful about how we talk to ourselves and how we apply ourselves. So that would be a piece of advice that I've heard women in our organization say.
Yes. I keep that Post-it note on my mirror. You can do it.
Good.
Yes. Awesome. I do tell myself that. Thank you both so much for joining me today on Connect and Collaborate. Once again, be sure to like and subscribe our YouTube page while you're here. Find out more about the Colorado Women's Chamber of Commerce and also about Deloitte and their program. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks
a lot.
Bye.